So, I never really had these memories of praying the rosary growing up because I didn't know how to pray it. Actually, the first time I ever prayed the rosary was in college, when I was first discovering my faith. It was at a retreat, and I remember we woke up early that morning, sat outside in the garden, and started praying. I was even handed this little rosary cheat sheet so I could follow along. And so we're praying the rosary, and I had this intense realization after the first decade or so. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, this is going to take forever. And I honestly couldn't believe people actually sat around reciting the same thing over and over and over and over again. It was just so foreign to me. And so after eternity, we finally finished the rosary, and my good friend Erin, she lets out this great big sigh and says with such calmness in her voice, "That was nice." And then I thought about it. You know what? It was kind of nice. I didn't really understand what was going on, and it was so bizarre and repetitive, but it was nice. So I think it's kind of funny how God drops these little hints so that we keep following his way. It's sort of like that Hansel and Gretel story where you're following the breadcrumbs, and then sometimes you can't see the breadcrumbs, or you get kind of distracted by the giant gingerbread house. But it's typical in human behavior. Sometimes we experience something so immensely profound and revolutionary, and we make these promises that we're going to change and then we're going to set things straight. But then along the way, something comes along, and it distracts us. It convinces us otherwise. And now we're faced with a chance to persevere. The readings encapsulate this typical trajectory of human behavior. In the gospel, Jesus is performing these grandiose miracles, and it's obvious that he has divinity. However, there are some who manipulate these miracles and say he's doing so by the power of the devil. So we have two arguments. Either one, Jesus casts out demons through the powers of the devil, or two, Jesus casts out demons through God because Satan couldn't divide his own house. So Jesus obviously has the more convincing argument, but how many of us choose the former argument still? As Paul says, how many of us are under a curse? When do we allow ourselves to be fooled into believing that what's actually good is evil? Discerning the spirits is a frequent topic with many of the saints. St. Catherine of Siena says, "The way of God is accompanied with gentleness and humility. But the way of the devil, you experience this prickling of the conscience." It means that whenever the devil is influencing us, there is this itch that we need to scratch right away. It could be something very obvious, a very bad inclination, but the devil likes to work in subtlety. For instance, we could get this great idea to help the poor. We have this great idea, and it's going to save all these lives, and it's going to change the world, and there's no more global warming, there's no more trafficking, blah, 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 blah. But as soon as someone gets in the way of us, as soon as someone tells us we can't do it, as soon as there's an obstacle, and we become resentful and hateful of that person, then there's no gentleness or humility in that. Or, say, there's a brother who we can't stand, and the guy aggravates us so immensely that we can't sleep. And so we're tossing and turning in the bed, and thinking about how much we can't stand them until we correct that brother. There's no gentleness and humility in that either. These are not opportunities for charity. These are opportunities for anxiety. And although serving the poor and fraternal correction are essentially good things, if we're experiencing this suffocating anxiety because of a thought, then that thought is not from God. This is the prickling of the conscience, wanting something that is essentially good, but with great anxiety And it's not just going to be anxiety. As Paul says, it's going to be sevenfold. Anxiety, frustration, despair, resentment, anger, loneliness. So St. Teresa of Avila and St. Faustina say that the remedy for this is to focus. To focus on God's merciful will. Because the truly peaceful person is too busy focusing on God's will. And the best person who was always focused on God's will was Mary. Our catechism says she is our model of faith. So we must channel her through our rosary to focus on God. We need to focus on the Annunciation, that humble yes to God. We need to focus on the carrying of the cross, the gentle perseverance amid suffering. We need to focus on the resurrection, because it reminds us that we overcome death. Use the rosary to focus, and by doing so, we drown out all those distractions of the devil and refocus ourselves on God, and there we will experience gentleness and humility in our thoughts, words, and actions. So now I've become one of those people who recite the Hail Marys over and over and over and over and over again. But I don't do it because it's something I have to do. I do it because it's something I have to do. It's something we need to do. We need the reminders of the miracles of God, because this world can convince us that we have to do this, we have to think that, we have to be this. But once we finish our rosary, we're reminded that all of these thoughts are lies, that we are called, and as Paul says, we are promised something bigger than all of this. And once I remember all of that, once I regain my focus, then I can take a deep breath, put my rosary away, and say to myself with calmness and peace, that was nice.